So anyways, what's the claim you're making about veganism specifically?
So I think veganism leads to severe malnourishment. I think obviously, as you know, you need a lot of supplementation to even cope with it.
Got it.
And I think it's just not the natural diet, as everything indicates. How about you?
Yeah, so the claim I make about veganism is typically, what do you think the goal of veganism is? So the goal of veganism is just going to be, we want to minimize the amount of suffering that happens to animals. So that's why we go vegan in the first place.
Yeah, we can actually touch on that. So I saw a stat somewhere. I don't have it linked, but it essentially showed that for every equivalent grams of plant protein that you would need to be the equivalent of those grams in beef protein, for example, is around 25 times more harming to the environment in the amount of crops you would need to farm. And by the way, I'm not for cows eating anything but grass, because I know most of soy that's farmed goes to feeding cows. I don't agree with that. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of farming plants for human consumption to get the same amount of bioavailable protein, it would cause 25 times more animals to die because of the moles, the shrews, the birds that are killed that try to eat the grains, etc.
Yeah, but the problem is that the cows have to consume plants in the first place, like soy, for example, or corn.
They don't.
They have to
aren't supposed
consume
eat that,
those,
though.
and we have to grow those.
They
in
do
the
not
first
have to
place.
consume those. They can eat grass. There's plenty of
Yes,
fields
but the
of
vast
grass that aren't
majority in the U.S.
utilized.
do this.
I know, and that's wrong. But ideally, in an optimal world, you'd have cows eating grass. In India, cows eat trash. They're called trash cows. They eat out of dumpsters and in pits.
Right.
That's not optimal, though. I'm arguing that animals should eat their natural diet because cows are adapted to eating grass, not soy.
Yeah, but that's going to be unrealistic. We need about 3 planets in order to sustain all of us with grass-fed beef, for example.
If I were to ever lend you, let's say, so your point would be environmental or just like harm of animals, or
Harm of animals and environmental. We could take either one. And it's going to be the case that veganism is going to be more beneficial for both of those goals.
how about the harm of human health?
That's another factor.
Do you care about animals more or humans?
Humans, obviously. But I also
Okay.
think that veganism is going to help, like starvation, for example, or lack of foods within Africa and some other places like
It's
that.
going to help cause starvation?
If it were the
I may
case.
agree. I mean,
Wait, what was
it's well, I think veganism could cause people to starve, as you're not delivering vitamin A, D, K2, EPA, DHA, B12, the active form of B6, amino acid precursors like
Got it.
creatine, taurine. Those aren't in any plants, only animals.
Yeah, we can go through the micronutrients right now if you want.
Yeah. So I mean, the obvious first case is B12. It's missing from all plants.
Yeah.
So think
Yeah,
about
so
it this
B12,
way. Like let me make one point. Like,
Go ahead.
don't you think that a natural diet for an animal, like beef, has every nutrient for a human? You can check that. You can ask ChatGPT. It has every single nutrient, some in smaller quantities, but every single one, every amino acid. Now, do you understand that veganism isn't our natural diet?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, logically, do you understand that an animal has a biologically adapted diet that it requires to be
understand that.
fully optimal, right? Like a cow, you can feed a cow soy, and then they have a lot of extra linoleic acid in the tissues of cows that eat soy because it's not proper.
Okay, so what do you mean by fully optimal?
So a fully optimal diet for an animal is what it's been eating for most of its speciation, and that's what it gets used to eating. So for 97% of human history, we did eat predominantly meat, and the stable isotope analysis shows this. So like, when there was a winter, for example, and I mean, I don't know if you know, the Ice Age was 2.6 million years ago to 12,000 years ago. So in most of the Ice Age,
Yeah.
we were consuming, there's not a single society that ate under 50% meat, and if they were, they weren't doing too well. And
Yeah, so I
people
feel like that's
yeah.
just sort of repeating the claim. Like when I asked you, what does it mean to be optimal, or what was the
Oh, I mean,
exact
have
word?
every
Like,
nutrient and nothing poisonous in the diet.
Yeah, so you're saying that our natural diet is required to be fully optimal, and then
Fully
fully
healthy,
optimal
yeah.
also means, and you just said define fully optimal as the diet we're ascribed to, like biologically.
Yeah,
So I feel
so
like that's
I
just
can
circular.
I can clarify then. What I mean by a fully optimal diet is a diet that has everything you need nutritionally for your health, and then nothing or as little as possible of the negative things. So I think you probably agree, eating a lot of sugar is not fully optimal. Eating no sugar is optimal, etc.
So when you're talking about the negative benefits or the negative effects of the vegan diet, where do you cut off that arbitrary distinction? Because we can agree certain things that are found in beef or overconsumption of beef are going to be negative for you.
Such as?
Yeah. If you like eat too much cholesterol, that's going to have negative effects on you.
And what is your evidence for that?
Yeah, there was multiple different meta-analyses that correlated cholesterol to more fatty blood acids and also related cholesterol to cardiovascular disease.
But those are epidemiology. Those are not cause and effect. So you would need a trial of locking up identical twins for their entire lives, and then you would have to monitor both of them, one on a plant-based, one on a meat-based diet. Then you could make a conclusion about cause and effect. If a person only eating meat did get that in a controlled environment, then sure. But the first case of atherosclerosis, for example, was in Egypt when we started eating grains. There had never been a case before that of diseases like that. Same with heart disease. The first case of heart disease was post-agriculture. So when we look at what actually happened in the world, we don't see any of these modern diseases before agriculture, though. Like the Hadza, they don't
because
farm.
the life expectancy was higher during those times. For example, in Egypt, it was much higher than like the Ice Age, for example.
On median, perhaps, but there were still many people who lived very long lives for agriculture. It's just infant mortality was very high. But the people that made it past age 15, it was very typical to see them live to 90. Plenty of cases of that. Like, let's say even if it was
during the Ice Age?
Yeah. Let's say it was like 5% of people made it to 90. There were still people living that long that did not get those diseases. I mean, I agree on mass scale. Like, if it was a rate, like, oh, they had a lower rate, yeah, sure, they're dying way earlier. But there was not a single case of atherosclerosis until that was the first case in Egypt, the grain capital of the world. The slaves were eating only wheat and soy primarily.
Yeah, got it. But my main problem is when you're saying that there was only a few cases documented in the Ice Age, or a few cases of people actually living past like 15, for example, in the Ice Age. That doesn't actually give me like true
They're
data
not a few
on what it's going
cases.
to be.
I'm just saying, I mean, you can look up the average lifespan. I think it'll say 30 to 40. That's the average. So there's 50% of people lived above that, and that's counting people who die off birth. And you know, again, with agriculture, we saw the average height go down by around 3 to 4 inches on average. And we saw the brain's size decrease by about 10%, the jaw size decrease about 15% when we switched from a meat to plant-based diet. We also see that degradation in tribes like the Maasai when we start giving them corn soup, westernized corn soup. They start developing these diseases they never had before. And traditionally, they drink milk, blood, and meat. They eat meat in the Maasai tribe.
Got it. So I think one of the reasons that the jaw example, and specifically, that could be attributed to things like cooking our food.
So you think, what's your cause and effect that cook? Well, I mean, I'd agree cooking your food's worse. So you're saying since we were cooking our food, our jaws got smaller?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I don't advocate for cooked food. So, I mean, I guess I agree. That could be possible. Because, I mean, cooking does reduce every nutrient.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's not just... Yeah, I'm saying that's not just going to be attributed to us eating, like, grains, for example.
Why not?
Would you agree with that?
Well,
yeah, I
many
just
people
explained it to you. Because there's other factors like cooking our food, which is going to decrease our jaw size.
So you would say that... See, we could play games and guess, but when you look at the nutrition of plants, they're all missing 15 nutrients, many of which are essential. And that's not the case for me.
Do you think that's attributed to us losing our jaw size? Do you think
I
that's
think
part of what
malnutrition is likely why, yeah. Same with, Weston A. Price did a lot of research on that, showing the traditional tribes versus the westernized. And the traditional didn't have malocclusions, they didn't have crooked teeth. And then the westernized portions did have those things. So that's a good case study example of when looking at the people with the fermented dairy, the meat, sometimes raw meat like the Inuit, versus their Western counterparts, the development is completely different. The heights were about 3 inches different on average as well. So it kind of mirrors this pre and post agricultural phenomenon pretty well in real modern world examples.
Got it. So you think that lack of malnutrition is going to be attributed to our jaw size decreasing, or vice versa?
Yeah. Like I think if you don't have calcium in the diet, I think that's going to be very, very detrimental to growing bones, for example. Like if you don't have enough bioavailable protein, which your body is essentially all protein, it's going to be an issue. That's why you see,
Got it.
it's the same way like vegetarian dogs and lions live about a third of the average lifespan of a meat-eating dog or lion. So a dog that's plant-based will live on average 7 years, whereas meat-based around 20 years. Same with lions when this has happened in zoos. So it's evident that when a species doesn't eat properly, same with Pottinger's cats, when they gave the cats cooked meat, they lived far less long because cooked meat's lacking taurine, and cats need a lot of taurine from raw meat. That's their diet, is raw meat. And you see the developmental, in practice, you see the developmental issues when you don't have proper nutrition.
Yeah, for sure. I can agree with that, but I think other parts of it can be attributed to other things, for example. Like cooking food. That would be attributed to the decrease of jaw size. It's not strictly
raw
going to be
or
the switch
cooked
of
plants.
diet.
But raw or cooked plants are both missing the same thing. So I would suggest that when you go from, also if you look at the bone density of us pre-agriculture, our bones were around twice as dense, which is, very convincing as well. Bone density has only been trending down. Testosterone's only been trending down. Now, there are other things that are causing that now. It's not just diet, toxins just everywhere, right? But even back then, you see that the bone density just shift right at agriculture, right when we went from meat-based to essentially plant-based. The bone density cut in half, as well as the height. And height is a desirable trait for our species, evidently.
Yeah, but you would say that we're taller now than back in the hunter-gatherer period, right?
We're actually equivalent now. So the average before agriculture was 5'9", now it's 5'9" again. So it only took us 12,000 years of selection to get back to where we were. And there's a lot of people that actually were even taller than 6 foot on average back then, even in the cold climate, which a cold climate genetically predisposes the people to actually be more short and stout, like the Inuit, to conserve body heat. So despite the Ice Age pressure, there were still people taller on average before agriculture than even now. So,
got you. So I feel like we got to address the micronutrients first, because you keep bringing that up.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Which micronutrients are you most concerned about, or which ones do you want to go through first?
The most concerning micronutrient deficiencies, in my opinion, are vitamin A, B12.
Got you.
Vitamin D in many climates, like if you live in Norway. If you live somewhere without sun, you need dietary vitamin D, which is an animal hormone. It's not in any plants, only in animals. So I'm very concerned about that. K2 as well. And then you have things like creatine. You've probably heard a lot of bodybuilders and people who go to the gym take creatine. Now, creatine you do synthesize yourself, but every study ever depicts that you're far better off having creatine in your diet, about 5 grams per day, for maximum performance and muscle growth. So there's many nutrients. I can paste the ones that are not in plants in the chat.
Yeah, we could just go through them one at a time. So we can start with vitamin A, I believe is the first one you mentioned.
Yes.
So do you know the two different types of vitamin A?
There's beta carotene and retinol, and beta carotene by definition is not vitamin A. It's a pigment. And I have the study on the conversion rate of that in humans.
Yeah, I agree the conversion rate is not necessarily the best, but from my understanding, it's a 12-to-1 retinol activity equivalence conversion rate, right?
So for 45% of people, they're low converters. So around half the population is low converters when this has been measured. And in these low converters, it's a 5% or less conversion rate. So in order for a diet to be sustainable, if half of the people have a 5% or below conversion rate, that's already off to a very risky start. Now, if you're a high converter, some high converters can be up to 70% conversion rate. It depends on your genetics. So if you're a high converter, 70%, great, right on. But then I would logically ask, why would you eat a vitamin that you have to convert rather than the vitamin in its bioavailable form?
Yeah, this goes back to the original point about veganism. Veganism is supposed to minimize suffering, so we want to do what's going to be minimizing suffering along with getting the nutrition we need. So when it comes to beta carotene, there's about an average of a 12 to 1 RAA conversion, right? So
Yes.
that would mean for like every single 12 MSGs of beta carotene to produce like 1 MSG of vitamin A,
Right.
which that's pretty bad, like um, just by looking at it. But 1 cup of cooked carrots, I believe, has about 12,999 MSG of beta carotene. So you can get easily 1,000 MSG of vitamin A converted from that
If
by
you're a
just 1
normal
cup of
converter,
carrots.
but there's some people who can't convert it at all in the low converter group, which is 50% of people. So,
This is taking
that's,
the average, by the way.
yeah, sure. But if we have 45% of people are 5% converters or below, then, and there's some people, there are a minority of people who cannot convert beta carotene to vitamin A at all. What would you do for them?
For them, we can just supplement it.
How do you, how do they make vitamin A that's vegan? Is it a molecule that looks similar?
Yes.
Or is it vitamin A?
Yeah, some examples of this is, I believe, a certain type of algae provides it.
Well,
But I'm not necessarily sure.
It's not the
When we're
plant
talking about
itself. It's bacteria that are producing
Yes.
it. So that's still an animal. What about those animals?
are you saying that? Yeah, bacteria aren't sentient, so I wouldn't consider them to be animals.
Oh, so if a cow isn't sentient, you wouldn't have a problem eating it?
No, I wouldn't.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Where do you draw the line? Like what size of animal are you like, oh, I can eat it? Like how about a fly?
I would
You
say a fly
probably
has some level of
you probably
I would say
kill
a fly
flies, I
has some
assume.
level of. Yeah, I probably do accidentally kill flies, but they have a much lower level of sentience. So the amount of disutility that comes out of killing a fly is going to be pretty much minimal.
So like the size of the animal is kind of determines its moral worth, you would say?
No, the sentience, like the amount of sentience it has.
How are you aware of the sentience of a fly versus a cow?
Yeah, we can look at the brain studies. We can look at the studies about comparing flies to cows. We can just use our sense data even to see how the flies interact with us versus how cows interact with us.
And let's say like where do you draw the line? Like let's say you could convert animal IQ into human IQ. Like at what IQ do you draw the line? Like that's sentient, this isn't sentient. I can kill this, like it's nothing, but this needs to be protected. Where's that line? I'm just
Sentient isn't
curious.
about IQ necessarily. So my
What's
two
your
main
definition?
criteria for sentient, yeah, my two main criteria for sentience is going to be having the ability to be self-aware of your own existence and also having the ability to have subjective experiences. So those are the main two criteria that apply to pretty much any sort of being.
So why wouldn't that apply to a fly?
I just said they did. It's just a
Oh, it
lower
does.
level of sentience. So the amount of disutility that comes out of that, like me swatting a fly, for example, can pretty much be neglected. Neglected. Can I pronounce
Neglected,
that?
yeah. So let's say
Yeah.
like a mosquito was on your arm, you would like swat it or you would let it live.
I'd probably swat because once again, the amount of sentience and the amount of pain and suffering they would experience, considering they do have a subjective experience, is going to be lower than that of the amount of pain that they induce whenever they're like sucking blood out of my arm.
Okay, and let's say a dog was biting on your leg and you had a gun. Would you shoot the dog or would you let it bite your leg?
What type of dog are we talking about?
A pit bull.
I'd probably shoot it because it would be justified because it's self-defense.
So you would kill an animal to prevent harm from being done to yourself.
Yes, because I consider that to be a rights violation.
But by not killing animals, you are doing harm to yourself nutritionally, though.
Not necessarily. That's why we need to get into like the micronutrients. I'm just
Okay,
telling you why the
so
motivation
Let's say
behind.
vitamin. Let's say. Oh, I have a question. I'll ask it this way: if supplements didn't exist, would you still be an advocate for veganism?
As in the philosophy, yes. As in the
In
diet,
practice.
probably not.
Like in practice of having a vegan diet without supplements.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. So you do understand it's sufficient, and basically that comes down to supplements. And The thing with
I don't think
supplements,
every single micronutrient you listed needs to be supplemented.
so I can tell the ones your body makes: cholesterol, taurine, carnosine, carnitine, and creatine, and CoQ10 and CLA. Now, your body, again, some people can make vitamin A. You have to convert the plant version of vitamin D into the animal version. B12 in significant amounts, which you do need a lot of B12. In fact, people who even eat meat are quite deficient in B12 because they're not eating enough meat.
For sure.
Because to even, when you look at the labs that sample the average population, around 50% of the average population is actually in the range of developing Alzheimer's of B12, which is like 400 nmol whatever or below, and 50% of people are already there, and it's like 3% of people are vegans, so that's obviously an issue already. Then so how would you address vitamin D for people in a very cloudy climate where they traditionally would be eating seafood for the vitamin D? And what do you think about eating fish as well?
Yeah, so I think eating fish is going to be unjustified because they have subjective experience. And I also think that another point I wanted to get back to was the vitamin A, right? Like when you
Yeah.
were to establish whether or not vitamin A is lacking on a vegan diet or not, you were talking about people who had low amounts of vitamin A conversion rates or people that basically couldn't convert any beta carotene into vitamin A in the first place. So my main contention with that is we're talking about like a very small amount of the population which we could easily just supplement. And when we're talking about like the average person, do you really have an objection to the idea of beta carotene being the source of vitamin A?
It's okay. Of course, the RDAs are based on epidemiology and average populations, so I'm not convinced you would have enough vitamin A to be actually optimally healthy, like a surplus and perfect amount of vitamin A from plants. I don't know if you have any studies on the levels of vitamin A in vegans that don't supplement. That would be interesting to see if plants are actually giving them enough. Now, vitamin A, that's just one of the things that is not, retinol is not in plants, that I think it's very good, especially in development, to have a lot of it, because again, when observed in plant-based societies like Weston A. Price did in the 1800s, those people did have a lot of malocclusions and poor dental just from eating plants in general, mostly. Same with and then K2 is also essential for your development in teeth, and there's only K1 in plants. So the thing that is my issue is you have to be taking tons of pills like a sick person. Sick people have to take pills. You're deficient to imitate a natural diet, which every natural diet does have meat in it or animal products at the minimum. There's not a single stable isotope analysis of a single species before, or group of people before agriculture, that didn't have a sufficient amount of meat in their diet.
Got it. So you're saying that the deficiency or the amount of RA we would need daily is just going to be arbitrary.
It's based on...
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, so the RDAs were also from Ansel Keys, who faked the 7-country study, which actually was 21 countries, of associating high LDL and heart disease, which that came out around a decade ago, that they found his full papers of the study in an attic, actually. So that guy, who was kind of a crook, he made a lot of these RDAs. So these RDAs are really suggestions from the FDA to not be in deficiency. They're kind of the lower end. Now, my goal with a diet is to feel your best, develop your best, be as healthy as possible. So I don't even want the minimum amount to not die of a nutrient. I want what our ancestors, that 97% of our species developed on, which during the Ice Age was around 80% or more meat. So I think logically we can assume we probably need a little bit more of these things to be optimal than what the average Western person has in their blood.
But do you agree you can get vitamin A, the average person I'm talking about, do you agree that the average person can get enough vitamin A from beta carotene?
To not die, probably. I'd say that, to not die.
Okay, so I don't see it as a concern. But when we're talking about goals of diets, you're saying that we want to be the most optimal possible on a diet, or just have the original diet that our ancestors did as well. Is that what you're saying? This is the goal of your diet?
That's my personal goal. I know some people are depressed and suicidal. They want to smoke and die and wither away. But I'm saying a happy, healthy human without mental illness should want to be as healthy as possible, live as long as possible. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that goal, but when we're talking about veganism, surely there's going to be motivating reasons for us not pursuing that goal. Like, for example, you wouldn't like kill humans in order to be the most optimal person if that were to be the case. Like, let's just say you had to eat a bunch of humans in order to be the most optimal possible. Would you say then killing those humans would be justified?
It depends on how far that optimal is from what would be sufficient without that, right? So if humans were the only things with 15 nutrients and I'm gonna die if I don't have them, then yeah, I would have to eat humans. But if humans had the same nutrients as beef, then I would say I don't want to kill people of my species to eat them. That's pretty insane. I think I'd rather eat a cow, right? So it just depends on if I'm gonna die without eating humans or not. And I see your point. You're like, well, yeah, maybe we can make it by with supplementing and veganism and not kill animals. The issue is on mass scale, that is going to lead to severe genetic literal degradation, especially when you have all of the anti-nutrients in plants that do remain when cooking and are in fruits as well, which are going to be inhibiting a lot of nutrients.
Do you think anti-nutrients are a problem when you're consuming like carrots, for example, for vitamin A?
Cooked carrots, not so much. I'd say I'd say things like broccoli, which has goitrogens, and isothionines, which will inhibit your thyroid, which in trials have shown you can cause mental retardation in a kid by feeding them broccoli because their thyroid gets messed up from broccoli. And then things like spinach, which have 800 milligrams of oxalates per cup, and you can only get rid of 20 milligrams of oxalates per day. So, a cup of spinach is your oxalate limit for a month. When I look at things like that, it's like these plants are not optimal to eat at all.
Okay, got it. So you're saying that the anti-nutrients are a problem when it comes to certain
depends on the plant, but
plants.
Leafy greens should be avoided. The only vegetable natural humans ate were fibrous tubers. That was starvation food. So if there was a failed hunt, we would be eating potatoes, and we wouldn't be cooking them. We would be eating them raw and spitting out the fiber for a small amount of carbohydrate. And I think tubers, like out of the vegetables, I think like potatoes and sweet potatoes without the skin aren't the worst thing ever, because most oxalates are in the skin. It's not the worst. I think starches are fine. It's something. They're deficient generally, but yeah, I think things like leafy greens, I think things like onions, very low in any nutrition or even minerals. They're very high in anti-nutrients.
Yeah, I agree. Things like onions are going to be horrible for you, but my thing is that we will be able to consume all of these vitamins without having to go through some of the effects of anti-nutrients as well. So I think we've gotten through vitamin A if you agree that carrots aren't high in anti-nutrients, and we don't really need to worry about the vitamin A part of it for the average person. So we could go on to
Sure.
B12 or B vitamins if you want.
Let's go B12.
Okay, so yeah, B12 is pretty much obviously not found in a vegan diet. So you'd have to obviously supplement it. Which the
Right.
supplement is just going to be an algae oil.
Right. So, well, firstly, a plant oil, it's going to be high in linoleic acid in a very unproportionate ratio of what you'd find in nature. That's already not conducive to health. In nature, you'd have the highest the highest content of linoleic acid in any animal in nature is 4%, and that's in something like a monogastric animal like a pig or chicken. And then you see plant oils, vegetable and seed oils especially, are like upwards of 20% linoleic acid. So that's already, that there's already just a small detriment. How much will that add up over time? Who knows, of doing something like that. And also for fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K2, the absorption of those is heavily reliant on saturated animal fat. And most of the fats, they're in the fat macronutrient category that vegans are consuming, are polyunsaturated fatty acids, and then MUFAs as well, monounsaturated fatty acids. those do not really help in the same way with nutrient absorption like the saturated fat does, because those vitamins traditionally are bound to saturated fat. It's the only thing with them. So consuming just an oil with some bacteria, you have to, I think I just don't weigh the health detriment of being vegan to animals' lives. And I think in nature, every animal kills. We'd be the only animal that's carnivore, or at least meat consuming, to not kill for someone other animal's sake. It's almost an illness in my opinion.
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to address was you said that it's the case that the B12 that we get from algae oils is going to be somewhat negative for our health. But I feel like it's the case that if we do consume those vitamins, it'd be better for us overall. If we
Yes, but there's a better
didn't consume the
source.
vitamins. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that, but this goes
Also,
back to like the goals of a diet.
now I have a
I feel like the
metabolic.
animal suffering weighs it out.
Now I have a
And
metabolic.
what you said at the end
Yes.
is,
No, go on.
and what you said, yeah, and what you said at the end was all other animals kill, so therefore it would make sense that we should be able to kill for our nutrition as well.
Yeah.
But I guess you wouldn't say we should kill a human if we can get all the nutrients necessary from other sources, right?
Yeah, I don't see a human in an animal. I don't really see that as a good analogy, though. Like, I don't look at a fish the same way as I see a human. And every species is biased to their own species as well. It's wired into us.
Okay, so what's the trait found of a human that's like to a non-human that would justify killing the said non-human?
The fact that, well, I don't really think killing humans is, like, completely unjustified. I think killing them for food would be very... I am kind of like a moral relativist. Like, I don't really have personally this huge moral thing, but I would say that when we look at a human, we see a complex emotional experience, like an emotional and a very sentient experience. When we see a fish, they have reflexive capabilities like, oh, I don't want to die. Like, I know animals feel pain, they don't want to die, but I don't see the same type of sentience and consciousness and almost worth of meaning of life as I do in a human when I see a fish personally.
Yeah, that's fine if you're a relativist, we can still run the argument. But my main problem with that trait is, let's just say there was a disabled human that didn't have like these complex emotional thoughts and complex emotional feelings. You wouldn't say it's justified to kill them for a steak, right?
I think it happens every day. I think people pull the plug on people in comas all the time. Yeah.
But do you think it's justified, like, if there was a disabled person that lacked the emotional experiences of a human, or the average human, but still was very much sentient and alive?
Basically, you're
Would you say
saying if
it's
there's a
justified to
human
kill
with a
them?
fish brain in it, we can say this. If there was a human
No,
with a
not
brain,
necessarily.
why not? Because that would be a perfect equivalence.
No, because, like, for example, some people get into car accidents and, like, damage their frontal lobe, their other parts of their brains, and then they, like, lack the sort of subjective experience we see of the average human. That'd be, like, an example I'm talking about. You wouldn't say it's justified to kill them, right?
But I would see, even when you talk to those people, they're still far above a fish. They're still typically able to form sentences, even if they kind of revert to like when they were a toddler or a kid in terms of intellect. They're still not fully aware. They're still having 1,000x of an experience than a fish is, though. I mean,
Got
for sure.
you. So let's just say a human being had similar experiences to a fish, similar sentient capacities as a fish.
Right, the
Do you
brain
think
of
it's
a
justified
fish.
to kill them?
Yeah,
Not necessarily the same brain as a fish, just a damaged brain to the point that the subjective experience is almost equivalent to that of a fish.
then I would say if they had to be killed to sustain life and optimal health, then yes. But that's my whole point, is we have things like fish, that have nutrients that we need naturally. So I wouldn't want to kill animals. If there was a way to be optimally healthy while vegan, then I would say we shouldn't kill them for no reason. Like I'm not really for like, killing an animal, letting it rot. That's pretty stupid to me. I think killing animals is just a must for our species to be optimal. And there's a few other...
But you would...
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go on.
Yeah, but you said that it would be okay to kill this human being if it was just that we could get our optimal health from it.
Yeah, that's what we had to do.
And but if we could get the other nutrients, not be as healthy, do you think that would be a better option than killing our other kinds of our species?
Not if they're all fucking in wheelchairs and they can't even think or speak, then no. If they have the
So
intellect
you would
of a
kill the
fish,
people in the wheelchairs just so we can have optimal health.
the people in the wheelchairs that aren't having a human experience, that are just brain dead laying there, and then we had to, yeah.
Not necessarily brain dead.
Well, the equivalence of a fish, yes. If they had the equivalence experience, they've been brain damaged to the point that they're essentially a fish in the head, then yeah, I'd say kill them and eat them if that's what we had to do.
What about a cow, for example? Like if somebody had pretty much the same subjective experience as a cow, would you say it's justified to kill them for optimal health?
If there were no cat, like if there was no other meat, and it was either I had to eat a human with the intellect of a cow or I had to eat broccoli and spinach, then yeah, I'd have to choose that. Just like there was a plane crash of a rugby team in the mountains. They were there for 6 months and they had to eat each other, and there were plants. They had to eat each other there to live. That's what they had to do. For example,
Wait, do you think you can't live on a vegan diet?
You can live about, normally it's around 5 years is when people quit. That's when the deficiencies, that's interestingly 5 years is also the threshold of the last of your iron being depleted typically. So yeah, you can live around 5 years, and maybe not even notice the full effects, and then you see the real detriments come with a few decades, and like your lifespan will be a lot shorter for sure, without nourishing saturated fat and actual full amino acid profile of meat, because you can't really replicate the actual. There's a lot of complexities to food that are beyond nutrition, like your metabolic state, which on a vegan diet you have to be eating a lot of sugar. Every vegan does.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's another thing. Your metabolic state of running on carbohydrate as a vegan, which by the way, keto veganism is, I think you would agree, nearly impossible, and I don't know anyone that does that.
Yeah.
Do you argue for being a ketogenic vegan?
No, of course not.
Most vegans are running on fruit and fruit juices and sugars as their energy source, because there's only plant oils in terms of fat. And by the way, for ketone production, the fat metabolism, saturated animal fat it's almost 100 times more efficient than something like oxidizing PUFAs. So you have to be eating sugar on the vegan diet, and this is also going to upregulate the Randle cycle, which is the competition for oxidation between fats and sugars. So you're going to be having some plant oils in your diet and then some sugars in your diet. So inherently, veganism leads to a poor metabolic state because of the Randle cycle inherently. So that's something, there's no way around that.
But I don't think that really answers the exact question. So the question was, do you think people have the ability to live like decades, for example, on a vegan diet? Or do you think like a vegan diet will kill them after 5 years?
It's person to person. You have seen a few vegans and then also vegan babies die. The vegan babies die in a few months, and then the adult vegans that were animal consumers before, they normally die after around 20 years, it looks like, in a lot of examples. And then it's like, I think 95% quit after 5 years. Now there's other reasons to quit, like social pressure, convenience, but there's a fair bit of people that quit for health reasons after about 5 years.
Sure, but I wouldn't say those people die as a result. I wouldn't say anybody really would die as a result of eating the vegan diet unless they weren't supplemented. Like, for example, we can look at ketogenic vegans, for example. People who just eat straight fruits and anything else. Of course they're going to die as a result because they're not doing the vegan diet properly. But if somebody did have the ability to supplement every single thing they do need, do you think it's then the case that they would still die from the vegan diet?
They would die a lot faster, yeah. They would die faster for a few reasons. So their cholesterol, which is an antioxidant, and it is the building block of cells and hormones, will decrease. And its dietary and systemic cholesterol aren't 1-to-1, but you'll see people that eat more meat have higher cholesterol typically, and people who eat less meat have lower cholesterol. So, I don't like epidemiology, but there is a source that checks cholesterol levels and lifespan, and there was a positive association of higher cholesterol and longer lifespan. Now, that's not cause and effect. That's not proof or anything. That's just, it can create a hypothesis. Now, so I would say a long-term vegan is going to suffer from these things. They're going to suffer from nutrient absorption because, again, even if you're supplementing things like fat-soluble vitamins, nutrient absorption is very complex. And even if a nutrient is in your blood tests from a supplement, does not mean it's being utilized. Like, there's many types of vitamin D, there's many types of vitamin C. You know, absorbic acid is listed as vitamin C. That's not vitamin C. And guess what they're testing for? Absorbic acid.
Yeah, for sure.
There's more vitamin C's types than that. So the whole thing, to me, seems like an untested theory that we're going to try to supplement all these similar molecules and, oh, hopefully you can absorb them well, hopefully nothing goes wrong. That's how I see vegan nutrition.
But you would still say they die as a result of these lack of things like cholesterol, for example.
Their lifespan is reduced, and I can prove it as well with the fact that they are consuming both sugars and fats in their diet at the same time. So that, by definition, will cause glycation from the sugar, natural or not. It's all the same molecule. That will cause glycation, which will tear cell membranes, tear lipid rafts, and even kill cells outright. That's what a blood sugar spike is. That's what diabetes is chronically elevated blood glucose, which your body only wants, again, 4 grams of glucose in the bloodstream at a time. So when you eat any sugar exogenously, then you are elevating your blood glucose, and that will cause issues, especially when you have fat in the diet. So that's just something that will happen in veganism. It's just suboptimal health, that in itself. And there's not really a response for that.
But do you think that's going to be do you think that's going to always lead to a cause of a death?
A cause of reduced lifespan and especially poor aging as well. Yes. That will reduce the lifespan. Every time someone drinks 200 grams of sugar in a fruit juice that's vegan for their workout or whatever, for their biking. I know a lot of vegans also do like running and biking, which will also reduce your lifespan, endurance, like triathlons, whatever. That 200 grams of sugar, you get a huge blood sugar spike. That in itself is aging. Insulin is an aging hormone. You have a huge insulin response. That's a stress and age hormone. You have the advanced glycation end products from the sugar binding to proteins like collagen in your skin. So, yeah, I mean, it's just sugar metabolism. So we look at sugar metabolism in terms of lifespan. It's a lot lower than fat metabolism.
Yeah, so my main problem with that is you're saying that it's the cause of death even though it's just a reduction of life. I don't really think you can make that implication.
Well, it's like, think of it this way, man. Someone smokes for 20 years and they die of lung cancer. You could say, oh, it was just a reduction of life, but it was also the cause. That's the same way. It's like, yeah, it's not like you're going to die in a year or something, but I think grossly reducing the lifespans of humans is just very immoral in itself.
Would you say it's immoral if somebody smoked?
I think it's immoral if we said breathing air is not moral to the plants that make the air, so instead you have to breathe smoke for their sake. That would be a proper analogy, and I would say that's immoral.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the vegans will be able to live long enough in order for it not to necessarily be the direct cause of their death. Like, if you look at the deaths of most vegans in general, or most people who live long lives as vegans, I don't think all the deaths are going to be attributed to their veganism specifically.
If you look at, fruitarians isn't the proper way to do veganism, I'm sure, in your eyes, but a lot of vegans eat a lot of fruit, like mostly fruit for energy. From what I've seen, when I see vegan hauls, it's around 80% of the groceries is different fruits, and it's like some nuts, and then some like rice, like some starches. That's typically what I see. And, there was actually a frugivore that died the other day to a heart attack and due to heart disease. So, it took him 15 years to die, but he died in his 50s, which is not natural. You should not be having that in your 50s or like late 40s. And I'm like, yeah, being fruitarian kind of caused you to die, even though it took 15 years and your lifespan was reduced far below the average, 30 years below the average.
Sure, but don't you think like certain deaths due to diet are just inevitable when it comes to any diet? Like for example, like most carnivores or most people who consume a lot of meat usually die to like cardiovascular disease or some form of cancer, which can be attributed to the red meat that they do consume. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's the direct cause of their death.
I would say
I don't really see that causal relationship.
Well, the causal relationship, the difference is that would be associative. There's not really like an actual mechanism. There's not a mechanism there, whereas like with sugar metabolism, I mean, I can link the studies, like every time your blood sugar is going above 4 grams in your bloodstream, that is causing minor damage depending on how much it goes over that. Like that's a thing that's happening every time you down a fruit smoothie, is you are spiking your blood sugar beyond what your body wants. Your body wants a very level 4 grams of blood sugar at any time. So, and also, I don't believe in cooking meat either to be ideal, assuming the meat has no parasites, etc. So I don't think a cooked carnivore that's using salt is a healthy diet either. So I couldn't really report on that. I think people like the Inuit who only eat raw fish, but it's around 90 to 100% of their diet's raw meat from the sea.
Yeah.
They don't really have cardiovascular disease until they were westernized and they're eating only meat. So it doesn't really like play out that way in healthy people.
Yeah, but even if we do look at these tribes, they do have death causes, which can be related technically to their diets. Like they die of old age, for example, or some sort of other function within the body that went wrong. We can always say that, oh yeah, it's probably the diet, but I don't necessarily think we can make that implication.
I don't really, I mean, if you look at like the cancer rates or like atherosclerosis of tribes that are living naturally, it's like less than 1/100th of the Western diet, which that isn't veganism either, but I don't really see when you look at really any disease rate in a tribe that's living naturally and meat based, it's just nothing there is like suggesting like meat is killing them or something. And think of it this way. So supplements were created in like the last 50 years, right? Essentially. Would it make sense for something that has nutrients that are only in that thing, like vitamin A, D, and K2, are only in the fat of meat? Would it make sense for something that we need to eat to also kill us? It doesn't really make sense either, just logically.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why I say we can't really make that implication, but I feel like that's kind of beside the point. Maybe we could go back to micronutrients if we're still concerned about those. So we were talking about B12, and I think your objection was just that the oils that are found in B12 are going to lead to other diseases and other bad things from happening. That's why we kind of went down this dialogue tree of talking about why it's the case that this would lead to a net positive thing rather than a net negative thing.
Right.
But if we want to circle back to like things like vitamin D, for example, that you brought up, we can.
Yeah, so I mean my point would be people in cloudy climates have traditionally always eaten fish for the vitamin D, and there's no vitamin D in plants. So I would ask, like, it's like at what point do you recognize that meat has so many essential things, and do we really understand if this little pill, which a lot of vitamin D is made from hydrogenated vegetable oil and it's a similar molecule, it's not the actual animal hormone. We're not synthesizing the animal hormone the same way that an animal would have vitamin D. We're making a molecule that's similar. It's like at what point do we recognize all of these factors that are only in meat? And it's sort of risky to say, yeah, just cut that out of your diet even though it has all these essential nutrients. Just rely on the pills. And then you're also ignoring the macronutrient split that only comes with meat, which is saturated fat and protein. And there's no vegetables with that split. So it's like, oh, now we're putting macronutrients into our body that we're not really adapted to eat. Because we'd only eat fruit seasonally, typically, which is around 6 weeks in nature. And now we're eating it every day, importing in fruits. It's just such an unnatural diet. And a lot of the long-term research, oh, maybe they didn't do it right, but it's not leading to great health outcomes. Yeah,
so specifically about the vitamin D, you were talking about an example of like a tribe, for example. that lived in a cloudy area that wouldn't have the ability to get the vitamin D from the sunlight itself.
Yeah.
I feel like there's other ways that they can obtain the vitamin D, for example, through what did you mention specifically? Vitamins. So yeah, I
Some
think they have
supplements.
the ability to do that if it's necessary, but I feel like the average person that's living like in America, for example, has the ability to get all the necessary vitamin D just from 15 minutes of going outside.
Yeah, but a lot of the world, like the Inuit, for example, as well, they don't really have sun. It doesn't exist in the Arctic Circle for most of the year. So
Do you think
like
a lot of people are living in the Arctic Circle?
it doesn't matter even if it's one person. And yes, a lot of people are living in the Arctic Circle, hundreds of thousands at the minimum, if not millions. And it's there. So like I'd ask you this, because I see almost a disconnection from nature. Would you know those tribes that have never been contacted by humans, right?
Yep.
Do you suggest we go to those tribes, we say, you guys need to stop eating meat and take these pills and then start farming plants? Like, do you think that'd be better for the world?
No, I'm against like going into any sort of tribe and doing anything.
Why?
Because we can just like expose them to diseases and stuff like that. For example, like when we what's it called? The
Putting that
Sentinel
aside, this is
Island, I believe.
hypothetical. Let's put that risk aside. Let's say we were gonna ship them a package with a bunch of vitamin D supplements and all the supplements they need according to the missing nutrients, and we said, okay, guys, stop eating meat. It's wrong. We know better than you, even though naturally you guys all eat meat. You're more in touch with nature than we are, but no, take these pills, stop eating meat, then start farming. Like, do you think that would be better because we're saving animals? Like, would that be better?
No, I feel like the disutility that's going to come as a result from them just like consuming the vast majority of their diet just using vitamins is going to be greater than that of the utility we would gain from it. For example, like animals not being harmed. So no,
Why?
I don't think every single like
How
tribe.
important is an animal
Yeah,
life to you?
yeah, we
Let's
could
say they
just
had
do
a
like
ton
some
of
sort of
cows they were
utility.
killing.
Yeah, we could just do some sort of utility calculation real quick. So if it's the case that they just live on some sort of island or live in some sort of African place that doesn't have the ability to grow a lot of plants, and they get the vast majority of their food from fish, for example, like you mentioned with that tribe earlier, then yeah, of course they wouldn't be able to consume a plant-based diet very easily and get all the nutrients they need. So they would need to have like pretty much every single nutrient supplemented to a certain degree.
And what would be wrong with
Which
that?
obviously we know that if we have to supplement every single thing, that's going to lead to net negative results.
How do we know that? I mean, we're already supplementing a lot of things in veganism. Why not just push it all the way if supplements are bioavailable? Like I'd ask you this, like, do you think you could get all your nutrients if you took a pill that technically had every like molecule? You just took that pill, like, do you think you'd be okay? And then you just ate sugar for
Nutrients,
your
are we just referring, when we're talking about nutrients, are we just referring to like vitamins?
micronutrients, like all the B vitamins, vitamin C, D, E,
Um,
K2.
Theoretically, yeah, we would be able to supplement all of them and be able to get all the nutrients necessary.
Have you looked into how nutrients are actually assimilated in the body? Like how you need saturated fat for K2 to be properly assimilated? Like I think the way vegans look at it is they think, okay, I see vitamin D on this pill, then if I take the pill, I get that much vitamin D. Like that's normally how people who
Yeah,
don't
I understand
understand
some of.
biochemistry look at it. But when you look at how these nutrients are actually absorbed and assimilated and then used, they're all reliant on each other. They're also reliant on the macronutrients, which are only in meat, like saturated fat. I mean, there's saturated fat in a coconut, but it's a bit different. So, and then, I mean, again, here's the other issue with veganism that you haven't addressed. So the thing you'd have to address is the fact that veganism is sugar metabolism mixed with fat metabolism, which does upregulate the Randle cycle because your body prefers to use either fat or sugar for oxidation in the body. And when they are both present, there's competition for oxidizing either to ATP in the cell. So how can you defend a constantly upregulated Randle cycle and the primary source being sugar metabolism for a human? How is that worth not killing a fish or something? Because that's going to decrease their lifespan and age them significantly.
Got it. So if we're just going to, what was the exact nutrient you mentioned? I believe it was, what was it? The fat and glucose competing, which is just eventually just going to lead to like diabetes, for example.
It's going to lead to
What
insulin resistance, yes.
Yeah, which is diabetes.
Well, no, technically diabetes is chronically elevated blood glucose by definition, and then insulin resistance is a byproduct of this elevated glucose. But yes.
Yeah, but the elevated glucose usually is going to result in diabetes, which we're going to attribute to.
No, because by
what you just said.
definition, diabetes type 2 at least is chronically elevated blood glucose. It's independent of insulin. That's how it's diagnosed and the definition of it. Insulin's not relevant
Yeah,
to
but-
diabetes. It's a byproduct.
Yeah, but
It's
the
the
ins-
resistance.
Yeah, it's a byproduct.
Yes, but the disease itself is the chronically elevated blood glucose. The chronically elevated insulin is very aging. The chronically elevated blood glucose is why a diabetic may need an amputation, for example, because chronically elevated blood glucose kills your cells in your body.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the disease is. You know, that's why
Got
you
you.
do not have anyone who does not eat sugar with diabetes type 2. It's not possible to have because there's nothing to raise your insulin chronically. Protein only has a small impact. Fat doesn't impact it at all. Only
Got
sugar.
it. Yeah, so you're saying that there has to be some sort of way the vegan can sort of address this problem when it comes to higher
Sugar
glucose
metabolism.
rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, excess glucose, I also have a study on this, it causes the oxidation of lipids and things like LDL, which we know that oxidized LDL is really the cause and effect mechanism of atherosclerosis and heart disease and artery plaque, is the oxidized lipoproteins, because there's only one type of cholesterol, and of course the LDL, low density lipoproteins, have to carry the cholesterol to the arteries to be used as an antioxidant. It's not the cholesterol itself that's the issue. So yeah, carb consumption, sugar metabolism causes advanced glycation end products, messes up lipid rafts and proteins, cellular signaling, mitochondrial function, just very causes insulin spikes. I mean, it's just, there's no defending it really.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the way we can sort of solve this when it comes to veganism is not every single thing that's consumed on the vegan diet requires your glucose to like spike up, for example. Like you were talking about fruit beverages that vegans will
So
use
you're
before like
ketogenic?
working out or running. What's that?
Because even fruit which has fiber and digestible plant cellulose surrounding it, which fiber is an anti-nutrient that will reduce your absorption of the vitamins in the fruit, which is why it would be better to juice it nutritionally. But anyways, if you eat whole fruit, you're still raising your blood sugar above what's optimal, which, by the way, your body is always in gluconeogenesis. It's always upregulated, no matter if you eat carbs or not. That's what's supplying your body with the constant amount of blood glucose, which is the 4 grams at any given time. So even if you eat a whole fruit, you're still causing advanced glycation end products to form, especially through the fructose, which is in almost every fruit. There's no way around fructose on the vegan diet either. And fructose comes with its own set of issues. And all these things are piling on. These nutrient deficiencies, you have to take all these pills, your metabolic state's a mess. All these things are piling on, and it's just to save the life of a cow, which I don't know why you care about anyway.
Yeah, so are you just talking about how this relates back to why I would kill a cow? Or why I would not kill a cow?
It's coming down to there's no objective way, even if you don't agree with only eating meat, sure, whatever you think the ideal diet is, it can't be veganism objectively in terms of health. It
Yeah,
just
for
can't
sure.
be.
I agree with that.
And I mean, so it's like at that point you are just sacrificing human life for animals that would eat you. You know, your dog would eat you, your cat would eat you if you died. They don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah, I don't really care about like them caring about me back. I just care about the utility that's caused if I were to kill them versus if I were to not kill them.
What happens if you kill them?
Yeah, so when I kill them, this utility is just going to come as a result of them dying as a result because they're going to have to be inflicted to something that they don't want. It's going to be
And why do
contrary
you
to
care
their
about that?
desires.
Why do you care about
Yeah,
their
because-
desires?
Do you want me to like give you my whole moral
I guess
philosophy?
like why would you care about a cow's desires? Yeah, over like being healthy or something.
Well, yeah, I didn't index it to that, but I care about a cow's desires simply because I think that sentience is. Are you familiar with theories of personal identity and philosophy?
Yes.
Got you. So I take some sort of continuity stance on it. So I believe that the person is going to be formed by just having the subjective experience. So I care about all beings who have subjective experience to begin with.
Why?
I just told you because I'm a continuity theorist. I
Okay,
believe
but that's, but
personhood
I
is
want
also
to hear
what
your,
grants moral value.
I want to hear your actual, like, your actual reason, though. I understand, like, your prescribed
Yeah, if I hold
ideologue,
continuity
but
theory to be the case, and I also hold that some sort of deontological framework and that rights only apply to persons, then it would be the case that animals fall under that.
and what made you think this way?
What made me think that animals have personhood?
No, what made you think that, well, they don't have personhood, but yeah, what made you, it's sort of like, it's sort of like this, it's what pushed you, it's against human nature by every definition, by the way. Like, every humans are animals, and naturally we would only care about ourselves and those around us that are humans.
Do you hold to naturalism as a moral theory?
I think naturalism in general is going to lead to healthier and happier people on average. Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say
Okay,
people.
but that's not going to be a naturalistic claim. Like when you're taking a stance of naturalism and morality specifically, there's going to be problems that can arise. Like naturalism is just going to be descriptive claims. You can't really get a normative claim. Like we should be happy and optimal from a naturalistic claim, or just a descriptive claim.
Yes, I understand, but my point is that it's aside from all the morals, even it's that going against your human nature almost always does come with a negative to yourself. And I guess it comes down to if you care about yourself more or if you care about animals, I guess. So I mean, I guess if someone was like, I care about cows' lives more than my health, then I would have to say that person's very depressed and mentally ill, in my opinion.
That's a moral claim.
Is it though?
Or that's a normative claim.
It's not really a moral
Yeah,
claim.
so when we're talking about morality, it just take a moral claim to be a normative claim. You're making a normative claim like, if it is the case that somebody believes that cows are worth more than their own life, then they're in a
Yes.
state of mental health crisis. I don't think
Yes.
that's necessarily going to be the case, and you're making some sort of normative claim. You're
Sure.
indexing it to some sort of ought claim.
Yeah, and
Like, do we ought to Yeah, that's a moral claim. You just said it wasn't a moral claim.
okay, sure. Who cares like what type of claim it is? Like I don't.
Yeah, if it's a
like,
moral claim, I'm asking you if you hold to some sort of naturalistic position, then you won't be able to make any of those moral claims.
Not really.
So I guess are you a naturalist?
I don't prescribe
no.
to any labels. I'm just speaking to you as who I am and my beliefs. I don't put myself in any. All of that stuff is religious-esque,
Yeah.
like identifying myself
No,
as
it's
this or
not.
that. Well, it's religious.
Do you believe nature determines morality?
No, I don't. Like I don't see. Here's my thing. Morality.
Where do you get morals from?
I don't. Like.
You don't believe in morality?
I don't really care nor really have it. I think it's
You
like
don't have morality.
it's like I have my I don't, what do you call it? I don't have a set of like criteria. I just have morality in the sense of what rises out of my being. So like if I were to see a woman getting stabbed to death by a man and he's fucking cursing and spitting on her, I would feel a sense in myself like I want to stop that. But that's not a morality that I have due to some like idea. It's almost a feeling. You know what I mean?
So do you believe moral intuitions are reliable?
I think it's the best shot for person to person than like any of the religious-esque like.
Yeah. So what's the justification for moral intuitions being reliable?
I think it's just that people should trust themselves and make their own decisions. I don't think people should subscribe to someone else's morals.
That's kind of just repeating the claim. You
And
described an
it's
intuition
sort of
and said that's the
self-fulfilling.
motivation for it being more.
Yeah, I intrinsically believe that people are capable of making their own moral decisions. Like I don't think there needs to be any label or anything at all, and I don't think it's important either. I think in nature a lot of people killed people and that was okay. That's what they had to do.
Yeah. So if you say you intrinsically value this thing and intrinsically think this thing is going to be good, you're repeating the claim because once again that's an intuition. I'm asking you for the justification for your moral intuitions being reliable.
Yeah, so I mean I can explain another point about it. A lot of times when people go into saying, "Oh, I'm an X, I'm a Y," when it comes to like having a set of moral beliefs, it typically seems like there can be ones that are far bad. It seems there can be brainwashing, sort of like religions, and I just don't think it's logical to go outside of your senses and then listen to someone else or anything. Like I don't really know how to explain it, I suppose. I don't know if you get what I'm getting at. It just isn't how things should be in my eyes.
I understand, but my problem is when you're saying moral intuitions are reliable when it comes to making these sort of value judgments. That's where I fundamentally disagree with you on. Like you saying that religious authority or religious morality is going to be flawed, that's fine, but that doesn't support your claim.
What would the alternative in your mind be on like for all individuals aside from trusting their own intuitions?
Yeah, so there's multiple different other ways we can evaluate moral decisions, for example. Like if you read into like meta-ethics, for example, you'd be able to see multiple different positions like naturalism, like I said earlier, which is just going to be nature describes a moral phenomenon. I thought you held to that originally, but that's going to be an example of something that is a moral statement or a moral code that isn't dependent on your intuitions or senses.
My point is, like, I think our intuitions are natural, unless augmented by, like, if you grew up in a church, sure, maybe that could be some brainwashing. Point is, I believe that ideally people should trust their own intuitions. It's sort of like, do I need some fucking like autistic moral compass or some compass, right, to take my hand away from a hot stove? Like, is it even that deep? It's sort of just reflexive and intuitive, and I think this is just opinionated, but there's a lot of lacking. There's a lack in the modern world of people trusting their intuition. So I like for example, does there need to be something so complex and theoretical to, describe why you should take your hand away from a hot stove? Why shouldn't someone leave it there? Because I think our intuitions as an animal are important. In every other way, why would it differ from morals?
I feel like you can easily justify the claim that your hand shouldn't be in the hot stove outside of the scope of just using our intuitions, right? Like you could say it leads to more suffering. You could say it leads to more disutility. You could say it violates some sort of rights violation. Like there's multiple different other ways we can evaluate that sort of conclusion that we're aiming for without referring to our intuitions. That's why I think morality is going to be important. I don't think intuitionism has some sort of justification, right? Like I still haven't heard a sound justification for why it's the case our intuitions are reliable in this sense.
Reliable relative to what? There's no
reliable as in
or something.
I believe in objective morality, but
you can believe that, but there still doesn't exist because the way the world is. Do you want
the argument for objective morality?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, let me just find this real quick because I wrote this a while ago. Dot dot dot. Yeah, I'll just type it out to you. Listen, like, do you know what that is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just going to be, we could just cash that out as objective morality, because they're pretty much the same thing.
I'll relook up the definition, just to make sure.
Yeah, it's just the belief that they're stance-independent moral stances.
Yeah. And what's your, like, defense for that, if that's what you believe?
Yeah, so when we're describing a moral phenomenon, it's obviously just going to be incoherent if it's the case that anti-realism is true.
And, I mean, who even cares? Like, have you ever thought about just letting the world be the way it is? Why
yeah,
even
be... claim.
But why even be, like, concerned about what's right and wrong anyways? Just let things happen.
So we can evaluate what's the best possible goal we can get to. Because how we derive some sort of objective statement is if we have some sort of objective goal. And if it's the case we have an objective goal, we can derive some sort of objective value evaluation.
But do you see how everyone has their own different goals? Like there's no unified goal as humans. Like, one tribe has a goal to get this other tribe's food. The other tribe has their goal to get, like, everyone has their own intuitions, their own goals. Like there's not some ultimate goal though.
Yeah, so I would cash that out basically by saying An objective goal is just going to be one that's independent of all stances. And if there is no objective goal, and if all goals are just going to be arbitrary, it's just going to be incoherent.
And that's
Don't
reality,
have a goal,
though.
just making word sounds.
That's the-
Incoherence is reality?
Yeah, the world is very incoherent. Yeah. Like, there's not, like, some, like, kumbaya, we all have a unified, like, whatsoever. To some people with a unified goal. That's why, you know, there's 2 billion people to opposing religions that all kind of wish the other people would die. You know, there's not really... Where's the unified
Do you
goal?
think incoherent statements can be true?
Yeah, could be. I'd say it's unlikely, but it's possible.
Okay, so what do you think an incoherent statement is?
A senseless statement that in our language we're not able to interpret the meaning of it.
Right, so if we don't have the ability to interpret the meaning of a sentence, then how is it the case that thing can be true within reality?
It's like if it was a language barrier or something. Like if a Chinese man saying an apple is red would be incoherent to me, but it would be true. For example.
Incoherent to you, but I'm saying incoherent as an entirety. Like nobody
Oh,
would be able to understand.
like if there was a
an
god
arbitrary
who
goal.
knew all languages watching, and he'd say that doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's not just going to be a language issue. How most people cash it out, and how I cashed out specifically, is just going to be an incoherent thing is going to be something that contains some contradiction.
Like an apple is 100% red and 100% blue, something like that.
Yeah, like
Okay.
that'd be an incoherent statement. Do you think those type of statements can be true?
I don't really want to say the whole blank, but I'd say like that, something like that could not be true.
Right, so if there's going to be goals, and if all arbitrary goals are just going to lead to incoherency, then I don't see it to be the case that anti-realism can be true, or the belief that there aren't stance-independent goals can be true, if it all just leads to incoherence, because we do live in a coherent world.
In what
Like, we
way?
do see coherence.
How is this world coherent?
Yeah,
You have-
like we're having a debate right now. There's no
Right.
contradictions within that statement.
Correct. Yes, you can make coherent statements, but like saying the world is coherent is like that's a pretty big stretch. Like, and I'd say any coherency we see of the world is sort of fake. We just have laws. We have a bunch of brainwashing that laws don't exist. Obviously, there's something in your head that limits you from doing what you want to do. So we have a bunch of religious-esque ideologies in our heads that kind of lead to more coherence. We have, you know, oh, we teach you a language, then you can, like, all that stuff's all in your head, though. That's not like, naturally, most of the world was quite incoherent and random, and there's murder and rape, and that's like the way things really are. It's just people are basically enslaved, and then the law doesn't let them do what they want to do. For example.
Okay, yeah, but if we flush it out, we can say incoherence is going to lead to a contradiction. Contradictions clearly don't exist in virtue of your other agreement.
They're not
So then it's
they're
the
not
case
mutually
that,
exclusive. You can have incoherence and no contradiction, but then all contradictions would be incoherent.
yes, all contradictions are going to be incoherent. I take incoherence to mean something that contains a contradiction.
Let's see the real definition. Inconsistent, it seems. Or illogical.
Do you think inconsistencies require a contradiction?
I would say, again, all contradictions are inconsistent, and then not all incoherences are contradictions, though. But either way, it's
Give
semantics.
Give me an inconsistent statement that doesn't have a contradiction.
My ass is in a lot of pain, so I want to go jump on spikes. That's true, but that's just illogical, and that's not consistent logic, but it's still you get what I'm saying? That would be incoherent.
Yeah, but if the goal is you don't want your ass to hurt, then it's the case that goal is going to be in contradiction with the
action.
actions you're doing, like jumping on spikes.
That
So, yeah,
goal
that
wasn't
contained a
particularly
contradiction.
established, but it's
Then it's not an incoherent statement.
Is it not?
It's not an incoherent statement anymore because you already established that it's not a Coherent logic.
Either way, I don't just to zoom out, I don't mind like this like conversation, but I don't know if you had like a point that looped back to like, so somehow I guess your perception of things kind of ends up with cows being morally like worth something essentially. So is your main thing the fact that like they can feel pain? Is that like it, or what's like? I don't want to hear you say I'm
yes,
a
I think we have
moralist
a
or
goal
that.
to
Just like explain the actual logic.
We have a stance-independent goal that tells us that we should minimize the amount of suffering and pain for all sentient beings, for all beings that have subjective experiences. We have this objective goal. So if we have this objective goal, we can obviously take actions.
I don't fucking care. Who's we?
I already explained how the objective goal.
But
an objective goal is going to be true regardless of your stance. Like, we agree we went to the moon. That's regardless of your stance, even if you believe we didn't.
So could you explain how that's an objective goal if I literally disagree with it? Right?
I just explained how
you didn't do it well,
goals
then.
have to exist.
No, that wasn't a good.
Okay,
that was
yeah.
no. The whole incoherence thing was not a good support of that. Then. Wait. So can
I'm saying that goals cannot be arbitrary. That was the whole point of the incoherence thing.
So you think there's some goal above each individual's brain that they just don't aware, they're not aware they have that goal, and it's some objective goal?
It's a stance-independent goal. Like, it exists outside of our brains.
How does something outside of our brain have a goal? Where's that goal at?
The goal is just located within reality. It's like a natural law, for example.
And where's your proof of that goal existing? Like
yeah,
you're
that's the
just
whole thing about the anti-realism being false. Like, it's either the case that realism is true or anti-realism is true. We agree on that, right?
Sure, right. But do you understand like you thinking that is like an actual like illness in your head though? Like there's not an actual consciousness overlooking us all or something with some goal?
I don't believe there's an actual like conscious being. I just think it's a natural law. The whole point is that
but it's invisible.
We can
it's
just
in your
take
head.
this in the form of a disjunctive syllogism.
But here's the thing.
No, it's not in our head.
That is in your head. No, that's a goal you've convinced yourself exists. Like you think there's an objective.
I'm giving you the argument for it. Like, I'm giving you the argument.
So you don't actually believe it?
I believe it, but I know it's true.
Okay,
like, if I know something is true, then it's not just a belief. It's a justified true belief.
Yeah, and you know something is true that you cannot see or sense in any manner. It's sort of just it's like a schizophrenic person saying, I know there's a ghost there. I know. That doesn't mean anything. I don't care.
We can use logical reasoning, right? Like, the way we evaluate contradictions cannot exist is using logical reasoning. We're not using empirical data.
So you use logical reason
to measure the laws
prove
of logic.
something? That's not a very good proof.
Yep, laws of logic. Wait, do you think the laws of logic aren't a good proof for something? Like, proving something that's a contradiction isn't going to be a good proof of something?
If you could lay out like a logical formula that proved that there is a exterior cumulative goal, like is this of humans or of like what is this apparent goal?
Yes, that's why I'm trying to deliver you the logical argument. No, it's independent of every single species, any sort of thing.
And where is this held?
I just told you it's a natural law.
And where is that held?
Same way like gravity is held, same sort of force.
Oh, that's a real mental illness.
It's just a force of nature. I'm giving you the argument for it.
That's a mental illness, dude. So and then again, could you please
if you just
also
read any philosophy, you would understand.
That's all in your head. And also, could you then also wait, explain the goal one more time? The goal for everyone?
Yeah, it's a stance-independent goal.
Okay, and that goal being?
The principle that we should minimize the amount of suffering to sentient beings.
Wow, you actually think that's like an objective goal? That's hilarious.
Yes, and I'm trying to give you the argument for it, but you keep saying that that logical laws or logical reasoning is not valid or something.
Wait, that's actually hilarious. Wait, so you think there's an objective rule that says we should minimize all suffering, and you think that's just above everyone? What put that above?
It's an objective
and what put that in your head, in your specific head, above someone else who says I don't have that goal at all? Like what made yours objective and theirs not? That's where I have not heard a single
just because
piece of
someone
proof.
says something else is Yes, just because somebody else says something is not true or someone says that I don't know about something doesn't mean that it's the case that my entire point's debunked. Like, for example, I gave you the moon example earlier. Just because somebody out there believes that the moon landing didn't happen doesn't mean it necessarily makes the statement the moon landing is real false. Do you
Right,
understand that?
and because that's an event that happened and it's actual matter, it's measurable. This is a moral philosophy. It's not.
Okay, the laws of logic are not measurable, but they still do objectively exist.
They don't know the laws of logic are all in your head. Firstly, the same way they said, you know,
No.
yes, they are in your head. And it's sort of like, and yeah, by the way, neither you or me know if the moon landing happened or not. We don't know as a fact. We've been told, right? I don't care about it. I'm not a theorist or something. It's just we don't know.
Yeah, me neither.
I've never cared about that, but yeah, the idea that you could think that something like there being an objective goal. Do you know like what a goal is? It has to be held by a being. So if it does, do you see what I'm saying?
No, it does not.
It does. Yes.
I'm saying it's a natural law, which natural law can be described as some sort of goal. Like a goal is just going to be a motivation. Or we could just take it to be
something
like
outside of a conscious being cannot have a motivation. Okay, if every animal...
Do you think gravity has...
No, because gravity is a force. Gravity is not a way of living life or something. It's not equivalent.
Gravity is a law that ascribes some sort of force. And I say the same thing about this objective goal. It's some sort of force that we see.
Where's this force that refers...
And I'm trying to give you the argument for a dog. Okay, so it's just going to be a logical argument, right? So it's either the case, or I'll just type it out because it's kind of hard to track.
Okay.
After we establish his morals, we can go back to like the nutrition.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like, I can understand if you get tired of this.
I think it's absolutely insane to think that there is a natural law which is a goal of sentient beings or something, such as minimizing pain for everyone. Because, well, where was that law manifesting in all of history? Nowhere. Still isn't.
Alright, we already went over the definition of moral realism. It's just going to be stance-independent moral facts existing. So this argument just establishes that anti-realism entails a contradiction.
How's that? Wait, could you explain that?
False.
Wait, could you explain the contradiction again of moral realism being false?
Yeah, so if goals are arbitrary, that means that they all lead into incoherency.
Okay, that's
and
reality.
Incoherency obviously contains a contradiction.
Oh, no, you're using okay, we have a question. So if one human is like, I do not give a fuck, I'm a serial killer, I want to kill everyone, then another person is, you know, oh, I want to save everyone's life. Okay, those are those two humans with those beliefs, and that's naturally how the world is. And evidently we still have serial killers, we still have vegans coexisting in the same world. Then how would moral realism be true then?
This is just repeating what anti-realists state. I'm not saying that just because somebody thinks something, therefore it's the case it's true. I'm saying that moral statements or moral facts, for example, have to be true independent of our experiences, because if they're not, then it just leads to incoherency. You're just making word sounds.
Well, there is no objective
that's
morality.
What, like, P2...
That's the whole point. There is no...
That's what's in question.
yeah, and it just does not, by definition, exist. It just doesn't.
By definition? Are you saying it's analytically true that objective morality doesn't exist?
Yes, there's not an objective morality. It's up to each individual has their morality. There's no natural law that's in your head. Yeah. Doesn't exist.
What's the contradiction entailed by moral realism's definition?
It's sort of like how would I explain it? It's sort of like, so the moral, like, okay, so I'm looking it up. So murder is wrong, right? Yeah, the idea that could be objectively true or false, there is no law or anything above each individual's perspective.
That's what the argument attempts to establish.
Yes. Yeah,
So you said you had an objection to premise 2. I gave the justification for premise 2, and now you're just repeating the
I'm not a logic debate bro, right? It's obviously outside of my field. So I don't care about any of those words. You'd have to logically explain. So yeah, here's what I want. I want you to sound out the proof of there being a law above any human or animal's mind that is invisible, that exists, even though no one has.
Yeah, it's a transcendental law.
Yeah, and in gravity is not a good comparison at all. It's a really bad comparison, because that's something that would be observable by a sort of sense, like, okay, planets are getting pulled closer together. That's measurable. A philosophy or like morality by definition is held within one's mind. There is no over.
That's not by definition what it means.
Okay, what could hold morality besides a conscious being? Like, what could have morals besides a conscious being?
Just because something isn't conscious doesn't mean that's some sort of moral fact that doesn't exist.
Not what I asked.
Like, if all of our minds disappeared.
Yeah, if all of our minds disappeared, there would be no morality or anything susceptible.
There'd be no people to hold morality. That doesn't mean morality doesn't exist.
No, it literally wouldn't exist. Where would the morality be?
The morality is an objective law. That's what objective morality means. You're saying some sort of anti-realist thing that it's mind dependent, which I disagree. That's what's in dispute. That's what the argument attempts to establish.
Right.
So I'll give the sound logical proof, but break it down. It's either the case morality is objective or it's not objective. We agree with that, right?
Sure.
Okay. Morality not being objective leads to a contradiction.
No.
Do we agree with that?
No.
Okay, so the contradiction, once again, is if it's the case that moral goals are arbitrary, then they're all going to lead to inconsistencies, because if somebody holds a certain belief about X and somebody holds a different belief about X, then the goals are just inconsistent. They're contradictions, which contradictions can't occur. So therefore, it's the case that
but they do occur. What do you mean? But what do you mean if and?
Wait, are you saying contradictions can occur?
They do. It's not if or can. They do in right now.
Oh no.
Yeah, the
Give
same way.
Give an example of a true contradiction.
I'll explain exactly. Not inside of imaginary land, like autistic logic formulas. Like there is people right now who are like murder is right and murder is wrong. That's existing right now. And there is the idea that there can be a moral law that's above individuals, that's in your head, that's religious. That doesn't play out in reality. It's invisible. It doesn't exist. You'd have to prove the existence of this.
Okay, so the first statement is what's in question, right? Whether or not murder is bad or murder is good is an objective law, is what's in question. So that can't be a form of proof of a contradiction that's true, if that's literally what's being disputed right now.
It could be anything.
I mean, I guess we could just go, if you don't want to do this, I understand completely why you wouldn't want to do the whole logic debate. We could just go back to the nutrition.
Okay, sure, yeah, sure, we can. But the idea that I truly, no matter how many but this leads to incoherence, that's all man-made words that mean nothing. It's all in your head. If you look at the things your five senses can sense, which is the only thing that's real, the things your five senses can sense, words, these are just sounds that you're interpreting to be something. They don't have any objective meaning. All the ideas in your head, there's a superior natural law, the idea of even logic principles themselves are still all in your head. If you look at your five senses, at the end of the day, every person has their individual morality, and there is no actual natural law that doesn't exist. It's in your head. That's my point. That's just cannot be disputed.
Yeah, I wish that's what's in question.
Yeah, it's already done if it's in your head. It's sort of like God. It's like God. It's there's just no evidence for it. It's in your head. For example.
I gave you the evidence, but it's kind of besides the point, because we want to circle back to the nutrition.
Yeah. So let's cover this. So you do value human life above animal life, or no?
Yes, because of the higher level of subjective experiences. and the more
Okay.
utility that humans would be able to contribute to society.
Understood. So, let's say theoretically, if doesn't even have to be veganism, if there was a practice, no, we'll just use veganism. Let's say it's just confirmed veganism reduces your lifespan significantly. Would you still value the animals' lives over a significant detriment to human quality of life and lifespan?
How many years and what quality of life are we talking?
So it's not like a one size fits all. Some people may develop different diseases. Not that aside the point, but not that veganism is like the main proponent of these diseases, mostly the Western diet. But anyway, let's say the atherosclerosis, cancer, a lot of the effects of chronically elevated and spiking your glucose levels, all of those things, those diseases, which then each of those diseases will have its own negative consequences while alive, and then also the deterioration of lifespan, let's say by like 15 years. Would you value the animals' lives if eating animals would prevent these things?
Yeah, so 15 years and slightly lower quality of life. Assuming that the meat is just going to be obtained the same way that we obtained the meat today, then yeah, I would say that's worth it.
Yeah, I guess, see, that's like kind of our fundamental disagreement. It's like, I value humans so much more than a cow's life. It's like I would rather see my mom for 15 more years and her not have atherosclerosis than saving a cow that is just meaningless and
Well, it's saving
worthless.
billions of animals per year.
My specific dietary needs wouldn't do that for my specific mom, though. It would be us not consuming, even though one cow feeds someone for about a year. It's around 450 pounds of skeletal meat, maybe a bit less, maybe 9 months. Per animal, there's over 400 pounds of skeletal muscle meat with every nutrient the human needs. And also, I'm really not convinced of veganism being super green in regards to not killing animals. I mean, so much pesticides are used on it too, which kills all animals indirectly as well. Pesticides aren't needed
Yeah,
for
we can
grass
get
nor
into
cows.
like crop deaths and pesticides and how many animals actually do die as a result of eating a non-vegan diet versus
No,
that
I'm
of a
not
vegan
even,
diet.
honestly, I'm not even interested in that, because I think honestly there's nothing left to discuss if you would, if you concede. So I mean, because that was theoretical, it's like, I guess, do you understand the mechanisms and cause and effects harms of running on sugar metabolism, which is essentially required in veganism? And it's like, I guess if you
Yeah, I understand the effects, but I still
And
think
you
you
just
can
don't
survive
think-
on the vegan diet.
survival, of course. So I guess would you suggest people, I think you kind of already answered it, if you're okay with 15 years being taken off. You're okay with humans kind of scraping by with supplements and pills and then eating only plants. Even though, I mean, and then another issue is the oxalates, even in cooked foods, are still far beyond what we can detox, and those will crystallize on the bones. Those are essentially little razors in your body, oxalates are. You know, most kidney stones are caused by them too, that are kind of impossible to avoid on the vegan diet. You're okay with those things, even though you know they will make humans have worse lives, for the sake of not flat out killing an animal.
Killing billions of animals, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I think
guess.
that's our fundamental disagreement. So I guess the moral conversation is kind of inevitable. But
Yeah,
then once again, we tried to go through
it's
it. And
it's sort of like it's sort of like your, and this is where nature is very important, because if you stray from nature in many things, like you don't get a natural amount of sunlight, okay, you have less vitamin D, you don't have a natural amount of socialization. We see people who are isolated very depressed. You don't get a natural amount of natural food, okay, you're deficient in nutrition. You don't get a natural amount of your feet touching the earth, you have less antioxidants, because you get antioxidants from grounding to the earth. Oh, you don't get a natural amount of sun assists with fructose metabolism, etc. When you stray from what an animal is adapted to biologically, you do see mental and health consequences. So it's sort of like you are putting your own sort of like it's like, can you zoom out and see that all of those beliefs about morality are just kind of hyper autistic and like don't actually fucking matter?
No.
You
They
can't.
do matter.
To what? What's gonna happen if you kill a cow?
Yeah, the objective moral code is going to be violated.
That's all in your head. You know what happens when you don't kill a cow? You actually get literal, observable, mechanistic harms to your body. Yet, when you kill a
It leads
cow,
to more suffering overall if you do
and that matters why.
support the animal industry.
And who cares, though?
Do you think we should reduce the amount of suffering in total?
Yes, if it had zero consequence, it would be like, if I could flip a switch, yeah, I'd probably flip it. But in terms of the sake to your own and other humans' health, and I mean, are you pushing this decision on people who may be uneducated about things like running on sugar metabolism? Like, or is it sort of like all focused on, because I was talking to someone else in a vegan server, he didn't even know that plants didn't have retinol. He didn't even know, like these people don't seem to really understand what they're doing in terms of nutrition. So it's like, do you advocate for that, or you're kind of like your own guy with your own decisions?
I mainly make morality arguments. Like when it comes to nutrients, I think other people are better at making those arguments than me.
So, well, I mean, were you aware?
But I do acknowledge, like, I know of the health consequences of veganism.
And
Like mainly
you're
in
doing
regards
it
to like the
yourself, right?
anti-nutrients that are consumed. Yes.
So you're okay with kind of killing yourself, like you're gonna live.
That's
But
not necessarily what I'm
You're
doing.
are you okay with probably living not as long as if even you were to have your diet right now with maybe even some chicken in it? Like I
Yeah.
think you could ask almost any nutritionist, even though I have somewhat radical beliefs compared to the mainstream. Regardless, you know, everyone could kind of agree you could be having a diet to probably live longer and have less of a chance for diseases. You understand that, you're still choosing that for yourself, basically.
Yes, because I believe
Yes.
in the principle of reducing the amount of suffering in total.
Isn't
Think the
that
amount of
wild?
suffering
Wait,
that's
think about
going-
that. Isn't that wild? An invisible thing in your head is actually causing your
I've already
actions.
established how it does exist.
It's invisible. It's an invisible thing in your head, no matter what you say. That's a
It's
fact.
not in my head. It stands independent.
No, it's in your head. It is by definition in your head. It's sort of like
By definition. So
yes.
so it's analytically true that a stance independent thing is inside your head.
I'm not going to argue about all stance independent things and all that jargon. I'm going to say the idea that
That's
there is a moral law outside of any individual's, like there's just a floating moral law that even if everyone's dead, oh, there's still a moral law. Yeah, that's absolutely false. 100%. It's I mean, a lot of
I don't
people have
really see
religious
why-
beliefs like that too. They have religious beliefs that there's a God, that if you have premarital sex, yes, and by definition, it is religious if you cannot sense it in any manner. So it would be a religious
That's
belief.
not what religious means.
It's in the
And you can't
context.
sense it technically.
How's that?
You can observe like the effects of the law, for example. Like we can
No,
observe
you're all-
suffering, and we can observe what goals we
Yes,
should.
yes,
or
but the
when
assertion
it
that
comes
that
to-
should be
we can observe-
avoided objectively is not sensed at all. That's in your own head, because then
Yeah,
you have a
that's why I
serial.
use logical arguments for it.
That's all in your head too. If you
Logic
you
is
need
in
to
my
like
head, right? Forgot
it's-
the laws of logic are in my head.
they are, yes. It's almost like if you were to unlearn language and like lower your IQ, you would then be a healthier, happier person. That's kind of like all because you're a somewhat bright guy, right? Like that's almost a detriment of being too like autistic in your head for your own good. If you were to like live as a natural human, you would live longer and healthier and happier. But you let this brainwashing that all of these, you have all these logical formulas and all this shit. It's like, bro, you're still decreasing your lifespan, man. At the end of the day, bro, then you're gonna just, I mean, I guess you don't care if you live shorter, or do you? Are you depressed? Like, are you suicidal, or would you like to live longer?
No, it's not like I'm depressed or anything. I'm just wanting to minimize suffering. Like, that's a principle I agree with.
What about your own suffering that you'll entail?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you put that? Are
like
you
I
trying
said
to like
earlier,
live
the
as like?
disutility. No, like
go
the
on.
disutility that comes as a result of me like going on a vegan diet is going to be outweighed by the utility of me going on a vegan diet, right?
You know,
Like the amount
man,
of
I would.
suffering I have to go through and like the 15 years that I have to decrease off my life. I could grant that all is true, but the net amount of suffering that the animals have to go through outweighs it.
I'll say this, man. I'll say this. I would look into oxidized LDL, low density lipoproteins, them being oxidized, how sugar causes that. I would look into oxalates if you haven't already. I would look into those things. I would think decades down the line of daily oxalate consumption and of daily large amounts of sugar consumption, you will not be here to experience this little natural law that exists in your head when you're dead, right? So that little natural law, let's say it existed, then you may be on the hospital bed in a few decades in pain yourself. That could have been avoidable, the same way I'd say to a smoker, even though it took them a long time. Every smoker regrets smoking when they have lung cancer themselves. So even if you do see yourself as like this objective moral guy, yeah, I put them above myself, I don't care about my own lifespan, I'm doing this because the natural law in my head, you can think that, but you aren't physically feeling the pain of it yet. It's pretty easy to do that when you aren't having the negative consequences. Do you see what I'm saying? It's easy to light another cigarette.
See if 5 years I quit or not.
How long have you been vegan?
2 years.
2 years, okay, so you still have 3 years left of heme iron. And you haven't had the effects of advanced glycation end products take around, like, I'd say probably like 5 to 10 years to really see the skin aging, which are also going to look worse. Those bind to the collagen and elastin in your skin. Of course, those are not formed by meat, only by cooking meat through the Miller reaction. Like, you don't have them from raw meat, but either way, they're endogenous. And I mean, do you eat raw vegetables?
Yeah, I sometimes eat raw carrots, but not often.
Those aren't the worst. Do you eat raw seeds? Like
No.
Raw nuts, legumes?
No, I don't eat anything raw.
Okay.
Like when it comes to nuts, for example. No, I don't think so.
So what? Wait. So
I used to eat like a lot of
what's like
sunflower
your kind
seeds
of?
back in the days, but no, not really anymore.
Are you aware that seeds are the most defended part of a plant? Like, if you are vegan, it wouldn't make sense to eat those though.
Yeah.
Like a seed, like a sunflower seed, the amount of phytic acid in a sunflower seed is like probably more than an entire carrot, like when one seed, if I recall correctly. So
For sure.
So do you still eat the offspring of plants?
Do I still eat the offspring of plants? Like,
so that
what
would
do you
be
mean by that?
so that would be any seed. That would be grains or seeds. If you plant, do you eat anything that if you were to plant it would grow?
Yeah, sure. Like carrots, for example. Like if you plant it, it grows.
Yeah, root vegetables are a little tricky. I'm kind of mean like legumes.
Potatoes too.
Yeah, those are all root vegetables. I mean, okay, aside from root vegetables, do you eat anything that if you were to plant it would grow?
Yeah, wheat as well.
Wheat. So that's interesting. So that in all humans, the gluten in wheat does contribute to leaky gut, which that's also going to let all of those plant proteins and such into your bloodstream, which is what an allergy is. So you just don't care about that stuff. You're just like, yeah, fuck it, bro. You're just like,
Yep.
hell yeah. That's that, man. It's interesting, man. That's very interesting. So your diet's
Sure.
like mostly wheat and carrots, and then supplements.
Yeah, some of that. Also, like eat Beyond Beef and stuff like that.
So here I have another
Tofu,
question.
seitan.
Okay, tofu does have all
Like,
nine.
there's a lot of other things that do eat.
So tofu does have all 9 amino acids that are essential. You would have to be eating 2 pounds per day to get enough of them because they're a bit unbalanced compared to meat. So, just saying, if you are doing
I also
that,
eat seitan as another protein source, which has pretty much every single other amino acid except for one. I think it was like, what's it
tofu
called?
is the
Starts
best
with
if
a
I
T.
recall. I think it has all 9 essential.
Yeah, when it comes to amino acids, for sure.
Because there's,
I
you
just
know,
like the texture of seitan better.
the ones you don't need to eat aren't that important. Your body can create them, but the 9 essential ones, you will get those from tofu, which is why I don't even think like putting on muscle as a vegan is that impossible. I think most of them roid though, because your hormones are going to be kind of a wreck without saturated fat. Oh, I have another question. So, would you suggest like a kid growing up, like would you want them to be vegan?
Kid growing up. How old? Like 5?
Like ages 0 to 18?
I probably think teens would be able to go vegan. I don't think newborns should go vegan.
If something is bad for a newborn, you think you do still realize it would be bad for the teen. You're just like, oh, they'll be able to, their body can suffer through it and not die, whereas the newborn would just die.
Yeah, they're not going to die. I feel like most newborns that have gone vegan, like according to most research I've seen, they usually do end up dying or getting some sort of incurable disease.
Bro, like, this is actually concerned. Isn't this so inhumane? You're like, yeah, you know, this diet can kind of kill you.
I'm not saying the babies can.
Yeah, but isn't it so, like, think about this, right? You're waiting until the human body is resilient enough to endure the burden that would have then killed them years earlier. You're like, oh, when's the earliest we can put them on this diet that would have literally killed a baby? It's sort of like, do you not see anything just so counterintuitive about that, just to save the life of, like, a cow? I mean, what about pescatarian? Is there any room you'd have to, like, accept fish consumption or something? Like,
In certain contexts, yes. Like if you're going to die or as a result if you don't eat fish, and like the tribes you brought up earlier in the debate, yeah, I would say they can eat fish. Go ahead, because they don't have the ability to actually grow and eat the plants they need. But when it comes to like the whole point of it being inhumane and wait, when it comes to the whole point of it being counterintuitive and inhumane, I just kind of reject, because I think it's going to be more inhumane to put these things in slaughterhouses and grow multiple different plants or multiple different fields of crops just to feed them.
But that's a straw man, though,
I think
because all
that's
that stuff
inhumane.
isn't essential. All that isn't essential.
Then you would
though.
have to grow like 3 planets in order to feed everybody with grass-fed beef.
I don't know where you heard that, because you only need 1.5 cows per year for even the largest human, really. Do you know how much food goes to waste and how much we're farming suboptimal animals like chickens? We have billions of chickens, and chickens are not good to eat compared to beef. If we were actually a harmonious society and we were like, okay, let's farm only cows, it could definitely be done. I mean, I don't know where you heard that stat, we need 3 worlds. I don't know about that. That seems pretty wild. But I mean, it sounds like you have more of an issue with factory. It sounds like you have more of an issue with factory farming than you do. Like, what do you think about a cow that grows up outside and then what if we had cows and then we just ate them when they naturally died? What about that?
Naturally died.
Like, they just died of old age.
Yeah, if they just wait, are you still owning them and like keeping them for the purpose of them just dying off in order to eat them?
Yes.
Yeah, then I would still say that's immoral.
Would you,
like if I did the same with humans, for example, like if I took a bunch of like children and said, I'm just going to wait until they die of old age or die of natural causes in order to eat them, that'd be immoral.
But the humans, like, threshold of enjoying life is a lot different than a cow, because a cow would just be outside grazing on grass anyway. It's a little different than like a modern human, kind of has different hierarchy of needs than a cow. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But
it's sort of like the cows raised properly. Well, it's sort of like cows raised properly are kind of just like cows in nature, except there's a fence, like, to like not let them, you know, fucking run off a cliff. Like, it's not really. I mean, I agree. Like, factory farming is horrible, both for the health of humans and the quality of life of animals. Like, that's where I have an intuitive moral reaction when I see a bunch of pigs crammed where they're basically eating each other's shit, right? It's not a pleasant sight intuitively to me. I'm like, this is not the right way to do this for those beings. But, you know, if it was the world being vegan or the world eating a cow that lives 10 years and then, oh, we just kill it in 1 millisecond, then we get to be nourished from it, it seems a lot more logical for everyone. Because, yeah, I don't agree with, like, cows being killed 6 months in their life or something, but it seems like there could just be a better way than, like, yeah, everyone, let's just run off sugar, a bunch of fiber in the diet, and then eat supplements just to not.
Oh, yeah, I think the ideal vegan world is going to be better than the ideal carnivore world. For example, we're very close to developing like lab-grown meats, for example. I think once we get to that point where you can develop lab-grown meats, we have the ability to get all the necessary nutrients, then I don't see it to be the case that anybody has any motivating reason whatsoever to not be vegan. And in the ideal, like, raw beef, grow our own cows, grass-feed them, that's not going to be as ideal as the vegan world that I'm describing.
It wouldn't be vegan then, would it, though? If you're eating meat.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the philosophy of veganism, which is just excluding all animal suffering.
So it would be consumption of meat without animal suffering.
Yeah, that's what lab-grown meat is.
If
like right now, it's not as.
If there's lab-grown meat and it's analyzed for everything, and it has the proper ratio of every vitamin and its protein and fat, saturated animal fat, animal protein with all the amino acids, all the blah blah blah. If that was the case, then I could understand it, and the cost isn't insane, right? Like, it's like realistic. Then, like, yeah, I could understand it as long as it's actual meat. See, my issue is, the reason cows have vitamin D is because they're outside. So, lab-grown meat, I mean, they're probably going to have to inject vitamins, and it's all the same mess over again, but what do I know? But, I mean, honestly, dude, I think, that was a good conversation. I think we kind of reached, like, our fundamental disagreements, kind of, like, morality, really. Because we kind of agreed, like, okay,
it's
it's
just all going to boil
suboptimal.
down to that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's suboptimal for nutrition, and probably, most likely, I don't have cause and effect, blah, blah, blah. But it just comes down to, like, I value the health and longevity of our own fellow humans over the death of a cow, and you don't. Would that be correct to say?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about like billions of animals. I'm not just including the cows. I'm also including all the crop deaths that are associated.
And I'm talking
with
about
growing
billions of
cows.
humans, right? Yeah, it's
I
like
don't think
I
all
was
the
just
humans are going to die as a result.
Well, no, they're not gonna, like. I was saying, like,
I think the best way to sum up the disagreement is just going to be saying that you value like our intuitions when it comes to morality, and I value something else that is stance independent, that isn't our intuition. It's just a moral disagreement. I don't think we have any disagreements when it comes to nutrition.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But I would also say, like, I'd say for a human, I think a human to live, I think a human naturally would probably be responsible for around the death of around 150 large animals in its life. A human that actually lives as long as it should, which is 120 years, according to our DNA and our telomeres. We should be living around 120 years. So in 120 years, you'd probably kill around 150 cows. And so, I mean, I can kind of understand if you really did care about cows' lives, why you'd want to not do that, because 150 is a fair bit. But I'd rather see a human live to 120 and kill 150 cows that live to old age, rather than maybe 50 or 60 and then plant some supplements and then die to a disease. That's what it is, I suppose. But
Yeah, I guess it just boils down to a moral disagreement. But I feel like that ideal world that you're describing is probably never going to be able to be achievable. And compared to the vegan world that I described, that is more likely to be achievable.
I agree. I mean, I would go out with a gun before they forced me to do that, as many others would. I mean, seriously, if they said you were not allowed to buy any animals, I mean, I would be concerned if that was enforced. If any dietary,
Yeah, I understand that.
I'd be really concerned if that was like, okay. And I'm not a large scale conspiracy theorist, but I would be a little concerned if I was like, okay, you are only allowed to buy what we grow for you to eat. I'd be okay. That's a little concerning. But well, thank you, man. I'll also pay you.
Yeah, good discussion.
I'll pay you $30 if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, send your thing. I got you. And
Okay,
hey, man,
thanks.
one more thing, man. Hit me up if you ever are reconsidering veganism, man. If you want any dietary recommendations, man. I mean, hey, let me know. All right.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right, peace, dude.
Thanks for the discussion.